All right, the theremin. The theremin. Woo. Hey, weirdos and waveforms. Welcome back to Soundwaves Unplugged, where we dive into the strange and electrifying stories behind music's greatest gear. I'm Aaron Ross, and today we're going full science fiction with one of the strangest, spookiest, and straight up wildest instruments ever created, the theremin. It's the only instrument you play without touching it, the only one that sounds like you're summoning ghosts from the astral plane. But this thing isn't just weird, it's got Cold War spies, secret labs, and enough strange history to power a Netflix limited series. So let's float our hands into the void and find out what the hell this thing actually is. Our story starts in 1920 in Soviet Russia. A physicist named Lev Sergeyevich Theremin, known in the West as Leon Theremin, was working on proximity sensors and movement detection equipment. He was basically trying to invent motion detectors before anyone needed motion detectors. And while adjusting a vacuum tube oscillator, he noticed something odd. Moving his hand near the circuit changed the pitch of the sound. Now, most of us would go, that's weird, and move on. But Leon, he said, no, this is music. So he built the first theremin, a wooden box with two antennas, a vertical one for pitch and a horizontal loop for volume. The closer your hand got to the vertical antenna, the higher the pitch. The closer your other hand got to the loop, the quieter the volume. No frets, no keys, no strings, just pure vibes, literally. By 1920, he was playing it for Lenin. Yes, that Lenin. The guy who overthrew the Russian monarchy sat down and said, let's hear the spooky robot violin, and he loved it. From there, Leon Theremin was sent on a worldwide tour to show off Soviet scientific innovation. And in 1927, he brought his futuristic instrument to New York City. He played at Carnegie Hall, he signed a deal with RCA, and by 1929, the RCA Theremin was on the market, marketed as the next great household instrument. Because who wouldn't want to confuse their cat with eerie tones for $175 a pop? That's like $3,000 today. Here's where things get even stranger. In the early 1930s, theremin showed up in a few high society homes, mostly people who liked the novelty or had too much money. The problem was, it's almost impossible to play well. Pitch is determined by your hand's distance to the antenna within centimeters. One sneeze and you're hitting a high F sharp instead of a low A minor, so it's never really caught on with the average Joe. But musicians with serious skills or strong masochistic tendencies embraced the challenge. Enter Clara Rockmore, a classically trained violinist who became the world's first theremin virtuoso. She didn't just play spooky sci-fi tones, she played classical concertos with vibrato and emotional expression. Audiences were shocked. This wasn't a gimmick anymore. It was a real expressive instrument that just happened to look like you were performing CPR on a ghost. But just as the theremin started to gain a little momentum, boom, it vanished. Why? Well, Leon Theremin himself disappeared. In 1938, he was literally kidnapped from his New York apartment by Soviet agents and brought back to the USSR, where he was thrown into a labor camp. No trial, no warning, just poof, gone. Turns out the KGB wanted him to work on surveillance tech, which he did, while imprisoned. In fact, he invented one of the first covert listening devices called the Thing, hidden inside a wooden plaque gifted to the US ambassador in Moscow. It hung on the embassy wall for 7 years before anyone figured out it was a spy tool. So yeah, the guy who invented the theremin also invented spy bugs. Kinda crazy. After World War II, the theremin faded into obscurity until Hollywood got its hands on it. In the 1950s were peak UFO panic, and film composers realized that nothing screamed alien menace quite like a theremin. It was used in sci-fi B-movie classics like The Day the Earth Stood Still and It Came from Outer Space. That ooh-wee-ooh vibe became an instant shorthand for the supernatural. Want a ghost? Use a theremin. Want to score a brain-melting alien mind control scene? Theremin. In the 1960s, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys used a theremin-like instrument, technically an electro-theremin, on the song Good Vibrations. That wavy sliding sound isn't a synth, it's literally a guy waving his hand next to an antenna while trying not to ruin the take. And in the 1970s, experimental artists and prog rock bands adapted the theremin as a symbol of musical rebellion. Jimmy Page used one live with Led Zeppelin, waving his hand over it like a musical wizard during one of their Whole Lotta Love freakouts. Despite being nearly impossible to master and looking like a haunted toaster, the theremin refuses to go away. Today, it lives on through artists like Carolina Ike, Linda Cavina, the theremin's great niece, and even rock bands and EDM producers looking for something truly weird. Modern synth companies like Moog Music still manufacture high-quality theremins today. Yes, Bob Moog got his start building theremins in the 1950s. The same guy who built the synthesizer revolution cut his teeth making spooky noise boxes. And let's not forget about the DIY scene. If you've ever been to a maker faire or deep YouTube rabbit hole, you've probably seen someone build one out of spare radio parts and tinfoil in their garage. Also, Juicy J plays the theremin now. So what's the legacy of the theremin? It's weird, it's hard to play. It sounds like your soul is leaving your body, but it paved the way for electric music. It was the first time a human controlled sound by manipulating electricity directly. Not strings, not reeds, not sticks, just raw waveforms and movement. From Cold War spy labs to alien abduction soundtracks to modern synth festivals, the theremin's journey is a reminder that sometimes the strangest ideas leave the biggest impact. Thank you for joining me on this wild ride through music history. Next time on Soundwaves Unplugged, we're exploring the mighty rise of the Fender Stratocaster, arguably the greatest guitar in the history of the world. Until then, keep waving your hands like you mean it, and as always, stay unplugged. We did it. We did it, didn't we?